Hello everyone, welcome to Fullmoon Movies. One from the Heart is a film that feels less like a traditional narrative and more like an emotional experiment, one that Francis Ford Coppola was brave enough to make at the height of his power and vulnerable enough to let it fail publicly. Watching it today, especially in 4K, One from the Heart no longer feels like an indulgent misstep. It feels like a wounded, deeply sincere love letter to romance, illusion, and the fragile space between fantasy and commitment. At its core, One from the Heart is about a breakup. Not the explosive kind, but the quiet, exhausted separation that comes from familiarity wearing thin. Hank and Franny are a couple who have been together long enough for affection to turn into routine and for dreams to feel deferred. Their arguments aren't about betrayal or cruelty, they are about disappointment, about the fear that life has already peaked. Coppola understands that these are the most dangerous cracks in a relationship because they grow slowly and invisibly. Now, what immediately sets the film apart is its artificial world. Las Vegas is not presented as a real city but as an emotional landscape. Streets glow unnaturally, skies shift colors like moods, and interiors feel theatrical rather than lived in. Now, this was controversial on release, but in retrospect, it's the film's greatest strength. Coppola isn't trying to show us reality. He's showing us how love feels when filtered through longing, regret, and imagination. Now, in this 4K, this design choice finally lands the way it was intended. The neon reds, blues, and purples are lush but controlled, and Vittorio Storaro's cinematography reveals its painterly precision rather than excess. Frederick Forrest's Hank is a man trapped between pride and insecurity. He wants independence, excitement, and proof that he still matters, but he has no real plan for what looks like. His bravado masks fear, and Forrest plays him with an aching restraint. He isn't cruel, he's just lost. Terry Garr's Franny, on the other hand, is emotional heartbeat of the film. Her performance is devastating in its honesty. Franny doesn't want fantasy, she wants reassurance, stability, and acknowledgement. Gar allows vulnerability to sit unprotected on her face, making Franny's emotional isolation feel painfully real. Now, the film's structure mirrors the psychological of a breakup. Hank and Franny separate and immediately seek validation elsewhere. Hank is drawn to Layla, a younger woman who represents novelty and uncomplicated desire. Franny meets Ray, a gentle romantic drifter who seems to offer the emotional safety Hank can't articulate. Now, these new relationships aren't about love, they are about reflection. Each character sees a version of themselves they wish they could be, and what they wish temporarily feels like freedom. Now, what Coppola captures so well is the illusion of escape. The idea that starting over with someone new will erase old disappointments. But One from the Heart is quietly skeptical about that fantasy. The new lovers are kind, attractive, and emotionally available, but they exist more as symbols than solutions. Over time, the film gently reveals that what Hank and Franny are running from isn't each other. It's about the fear of staying and choosing again. The music plays a crucial role in expressing what the characters can't say. Tom Waits' score doesn't function like a traditional soundtrack, it's an emotional narrator. His gravely voiced and melancholic melodies feels like thoughts drifting through empty rooms after an argument. Now, in the 4K restorations, the clarity of the audio allows Waits' music to breathe, making the film feel more like a dreamlike musical without choreography. Songs like Old Boyfriends and You Can't Unring a Bell don't comment on story, they are the story. The film's pacing is deliberate, sometimes challenging. Coppola allows scenes to linger, silences to stretch, and emotions to simmer then just explode. Now, this is not a film interested in plot momentum, it's interested in emotional recognition. Now, that patience, once criticized, now feels refreshing. In an area of fast cut romances and overstated sentiment, One from the Heart trusts the audience to sit with discomfort. The 4K presentation is really transformative. The film finally looks the way Coppola imagined it, controlled, textured, and intimate despite its artificial sets. Details in costumes, reflection in glass, and subtle lighting shifts add emotional nuances. Grain is preserved, colors are bold but not garish, and the overall image feels cinematic rather than museum-like. Now, this restoration doesn't modernize the film, it in fact redeems it. The final act of One from the Heart is not about reconciliation in the conventional sense, but it's about choice. Hank and Franny doesn't reunite because everything is magically fixed. They reunite because they recognize the cost of fantasy and the value of shared history. Now, the ending is cautious, imperfect, and deeply human. Love, Coppola suggests, isn't about fireworks. It's about showing up again after disappointment. Now, looking back, it's impossible to separate the film from its history. One from the Heart nearly destroyed Coppola financially and critically. It became a shorthand for artist access. But time has kind to it. What once looked like indulgence now reads as vulnerability. Coppola exposed not just his characters, but his own belief in romantic idealism and paid the price for it. Now, today, One from the Heart feels prophetic in a culture obsessed with reinvention, upgrades, and emotional shortcuts. The film quietly argues for something unfashionable, which is commitment as an act of courage. Not staying because it's easy, but staying because you choose to see someone clearly without illusion. In conclusion, One from the Heart is not a film about Las Vegas, spectacle, or style. It's about fragile moments when fantasy collapses and real love, which is messy, imperfect, and deeply human, has to decide whether it's worth continuing. Now, seen in 4K with fresh eyes and a little more life experience, it finally feels like what it always wanted to be. Not a failure, but a confession. Now, this movie is a must-watch.